everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Lions Grid. I am Kevin Marhine, joined today by Mr. Jeffrey Raymond. Jeffrey, how are you doing this evening?
Doing fantastic. Football back in full swing. The Lions getting a win in prime time, going to overtime to do so, but that was a sweet little overtime we got. But doing good, doing good.
Absolutely, and it was feeling like fall weather. I know it's warmed up a little bit around me here in Michigan. We're back into the high 70s, low 80s, but it definitely having college football back, having the NFL back. It was a great weekend, and certainly if you're a fan of football, a lot to appreciate. So you know, Jeffrey, this is our first post game. Well, I guess reaction or post game episode. Obviously, like you said, Lions took care of business against the Rams on Sunday, and we'll get into that. But before we get into the Lions game in particular, we'll go ahead and we'll go grind the grid. You may remember this segment from last season, but this is where we just take a look at what happened across the league, take a look at the games, and sort of go over that. This is, full disclosure, we're just like a lot of the NFL teams. We're still getting the rust off. It was a long preseason. We're not we're not in our final form yet. We haven't reached the end game. So this will improve as the season goes on. So we appreciate you sticking with us here. But things started off this NFL week, Jeffrey, in Kansas City. We had the Chiefs taking on the Ravens. The final score there, of course, 27-20. The Chiefs holding off the Ravens there. Isaiah Likely just a toe short of a touchdown, or toe too far for a touchdown, however you want to word it.
I appreciate the opening up on Thursday night with an actual good matchup. Usually they save Thursday night for like Carolina versus like New Orleans or something like that. But we got a good prime matchup with the AFC, the favorites, and it was a good game.
Yeah, and last year, of course, too, they started with Kansas City and the Lions. So the last 2 years, kudos to the NFL really popping off with some great matchups to start the season. Next, we had a international game. We had the Packers taking on the Eagles. The Eagles were the home team, even though it was played in Brazil. The Eagles get the win there, Jeffrey, 34-29. Jordan Love gets injured at the end of that game. Certainly something that will benefit the Lions moving forward, as he is expected. I think I've seen like 3 to 6 weeks anywhere in there.
Definitely good news for the Packers that it wasn't a full season ending kind of issue like it kind of looked like in the beginning, because it looked like a pretty gnarly bending of his ankle, but he got out with just this MCL issue. And so, but their backup for the next few weeks, one Malik Willis.
So former Liberty University. I'm not sure what their mascot is, but
the Statue of Liberties.
That'd be an interesting fit. I like it. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Certainly another opportunity here for the Lions with Jordan Love out. Certainly a chance to really. We're not necessarily playing the Packers in that time, but a good opportunity to stack up some wins when they might be struggling to put games into that win column. Speaking of struggling to put games in the win column, we have the Carolina Panthers, who traveled to New Orleans to take on the Saints. And you know what? If the Saints could play the Panthers every week, they would be a Super Bowl team, because they came out with
Carr would be MVP.
It just 47-10 beatdown of the Panthers. Jeffrey, I know you had mentioned in last episode that you were thinking one of the things you were keeping your eyes on was, could Bryce Young sort of rebound the season? We're only 1 week in, but that was a rough week 1 for Bryce Young.
Yeah, first pass of the new season, picked off immediately. He looks pretty much exactly how he looked at the end of last season, if not a little bit more kind of antsy on there. It's tough. At one point, his own lineman tackled him. It's just, I don't know, based on kind of what they did this offseason, if it's going to be enough to put that kind of stuff around him. And now, is he even talented enough to be in that spot?
Yeah, there are 16 games left to go in the season, so there's plenty of time for him to improve. But right now, I definitely have Bryce Young as one of the bottom 3 QBs in the NFL currently. And speaking of bottom 3 QBs, The next game, we had the Vikings traveling to New York to take. Well, I'm sorry, actually traveling to New Jersey to play the New York Giants. Uh, but surprisingly, here you may think Sam Darnold would be that bottom quarterback, but no, no, no. It is Danny Dimes who once again came out and showed that giving him that extension may not have been the best idea. The Vikings getting a 28-6 victory. The Giants really struggled in that. We already talked about the Eagles. Saquon Barkley scored 3 touchdowns, which is more touchdowns than the Giants have on the season. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts about that Vikings victory over the Giants?
Yeah, Danny Dimes is looking not so dimey. Let's say that. But I think I'm actually a little bit more impressed with what we saw out of Mr. Sam Darnold. Really, I mean, he balled out today. Like, JJ McCarthy has went down, but looks like they've got somebody like next man up to be thrown out there to Justin Jefferson, and a pretty stacked kind of weapons room that they have.
Yeah, certainly will be interesting to see how that plays out. Their defense also looked really good in that game, so it's going to be interesting to see, did their defense look good because the Giants' offense is that bad, or did is the Vikings defense so good they made the Giants' offense look that bad? Of course, we get to play them twice, so we'll find out later on this season. Then a team that everyone was thinking could be the worst one in the NFL got their first win post Bill Belichick. The Patriots going to Cincinnati, pull out the 16-10 win, and Joe Burrow and the the Bengals looking kind of sloppy in Week 1 again. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, very surprising, especially because this was the first preseason where Joe Burrow's had the entire preseason as healthy, so he got the full kind of ramp up into the NFL season without having to deal with rehabbing and all that stuff. He was with the team and was able to practice all that kind of stuff. Still, they did not look good, and I think it's a little concerning there for Cincinnati, who wants to be considered kind of the favorites here in the North, AFC North and the conference. But I also have to say, Patriots defense, I mean, they shut down a pretty clicking offense, supposedly, right? I mean, they look like they could win games on defense alone. Jacoby Brissett actually had a nice game.
Yeah, and certainly want to say congratulations to Gerard Mayo getting his first win as a head coach there, and they look good. And unfortunately for the Bengals, they don't really have, they're no stranger to slow starts, but next week, this upcoming week, it's Kansas City is their opponent. So you go from going against the team that everyone considers potentially to be the worst in the NFL to going up against a team that is the unanimous best team in the NFL. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. There's no amount of good luck here. The Steelers and the Falcons, Jeffrey. This was kind of a very ugly game. Steelers getting the win 18-10. They got those 18 points.
That's such
all
a
field
Steelers
goals.
Final score. That's such a Steelers final score.
All field goals, no touchdowns. Of course, Justin Fields kind of got the surprise start in this game. And even though Russell Wilson was supposed to be inactive, he was in full uniform standing on the sideline, so that was kind of weird. But then Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, Kirk definitely looked like he had some rust coming off the knee injury, of course, last season, this being his first start. A lot of room for improvement there for the Falcons, and the Steelers also, again, no touchdowns, but got to call out TJ Watt's performance in that game. I think he is definitely him, Chris Jones, Max Crosby, and Aiden Hutchinson. Those are kind of at the moment my sort of 4 picks as for Defensive Player of the Year after Week 1. If those guys can do what they did in Week 1, I think you'll see one of those 4 players ending up with the award. So TJ Watt looked impressive, but Falcons offense. Kyle Pitts got a touchdown, but outside of that,
I wonder how long it's going to kind of take Kirk to kind of get back into a little bit more of a mobile state. Like, they weren't even doing play actions or rollouts. They were pretty much kind of keeping him as a statue back there. And he didn't look like he was any more than a statue, really. So I wonder if, because Kirk Cousins has had slow starts in the past. I wonder how much grumbling there'll be to get Michael Penix Jr. in there if, like, the offense kind of looks stale.
Yeah, and it's certainly this is a problem of the Falcons' own creation. They're drafting Michael Penix with their first-round pick after signing Kirk Cousins to that big contract in the offseason. fans are definitely going to be looking at that and say, well, you know, if Kirk Cousins does struggle, why not the rookie that we invested this first round pick in? So, but that's a problem they made for themselves. So I don't feel too sorry there. Then in a divisional matchup, Jeffrey, we had the Texans traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Colts in what was one of the better games on Sunday. And personally, uh, Anthony Richardson, just got to say that he is a physical freak. That touchdown pass that he threw like 60 yards in the air to Pierce was incredible. But as good as he is, the Texans are a better team. You look at that offense. I don't know how you're supposed to stop CJ Stroud and this passing game. And now they have Joe Mixon as well, adding a rushing attack to it.
Mhm.
The
And with
Texans
Joe,
could be
yeah,
a problem in the AFC.
yeah, and Joe Mixon, I think he had like 3 or 4 yards before contact this week while running the ball, which means that there were some wide open holes that they were blowing into that Indianapolis defense. But yeah, I think with Anthony Richardson, he's got a ton of talent and he's super exciting to watch. But on the flip side here, it's basically his rookie season, right? Because he only played 2 full games worth of action last year with all the injuries. But I think it's going to be raw. I mean, he only completed 9 passes in this game, surprisingly. So I think it's going to be a little bumpy for Indianapolis, but we're going to see kind of him flashing his greatness every week.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because another quarterback where that tends to be the case is the quarterback in our next game here. The Cardinals traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills, and Josh Allen, sort of known for being, the Bills live and die by him. At moments, he is great. At other moments, it's ugly. And there were a couple of those moments in this game, but ultimately the Bills were able to come back. They were down to the Cardinals early, but they get the 34-28 victory. Definitely the Cardinals look much better with a healthy Kyler Murray behind center. And then one thing that was a little bit disappointing, if you're a fantasy football owner like me and you took Marvin Harrison Jr. In the first round, he did not really, there were a lot of rookie receivers this week that made pretty good debuts, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas down with Jacksonville, Lad McConkey with the Chargers. There were plenty of rookie receivers that stepped up, but Marvin Harrison Jr., who was an early draft pick, did not establish himself this week. So hopefully we can see that in week 2. But what are your thoughts there about what we saw from the Bills and the Cardinals, Jeffrey?
Yeah, for the Cardinals offense, I mean I mean, it was pretty much the James Conner show for quite a bit of that game. They kept handing like they were utilizing him quite a bit, so it's clear they want to run the ball. But yeah, I think Kyler Murray he looks just about as good as he did before the injury. I think they're going to keep kind of clicking. They're still a young team and they're developing their players with a second-year head coach over there. I think it's a good sign that they were being this competitive against a pretty good Bills team.
Yes, and they were the only team this past weekend to return the new kickoff format for a touchdown. So they put the first one on the board. Jeffrey, while we're on the subject, we'll take a mini pause here, going down a little tangent. What are your thoughts about that new kickoff rule? How do you feel about that landing zone and all of that? What are your thoughts?
I like it. I kind of wish that the kicker was back a little bit further, actually, so like it almost eliminates the chance of there being a touchback unless you're like a superhuman kicker kind of thing. But I think the way it's been going now, we're seeing teams like obviously we got our scores yesterday, but I think that over the course of the season there's going to be a little bit more. They call it the dynamic kickoff, and they like to remind us it's called the dynamic kickoff now. But I think we're going to see more, and I'm sorry to use the NFL's phrases, some more dynamic blocking schemes and some more dynamic kind of motions on these returns, and hopefully we can kind of see some setups for some a big increase in some of these returns. But overall, I enjoy it. I think the kickoff and the touchback kind of it's a non-play. It doesn't really mean anything at that point. So I'm all for changing it up.
Yeah, watching college football and having that be the same, and then seeing there wasn't really a big difference going from Saturday to Sunday, even with the 2 different kickoff formats in terms of my enjoyment value. So, I'm interested to see how it like evolves over the course of the season. But yeah, to me, I mean, outside of usually like kickoffs are only really like get hyped when it's either going to be that onside kick because you need to recover the ball to try and score, or if you're like kicking it off at the end of the game, they're like, well, we'll see if they do the, Motor City Miracle or something like that, where they try and do the laterals and stuff like that. So, really, it's not usually a big. Most kickoffs are pretty uneventful. So, not a huge thing on my radar. And then speaking of disappointing rookie debuts, Caleb Williams and the Bears, they do get a win 24-17 over the Titans. But really, it felt like this was a game where neither team really wanted to win too badly, but that Bears defense and special teams ended up being the difference makers there. Uh, Will Levis and the Titans didn't look great. Tony Pollard did. It does seem to have established himself as the running back one. They thought there would be a little bit more of a split between him and Tajay Spears, but it looks like he will be the main workhorse there, at least through week one. But anything you want to call out with these Bears and the Titans, Jeffrey?
Yeah, it's I think Caleb Williams also only completed 9 passes, I believe. But yeah, I actually honestly expected him to be a little better and be one of like the more dynamic debuts here because they got weapons, and they have they have things around him, especially because they have a pretty decent defense too, with all their acquisitions they've got over the past couple of years. But sloppy football, turnovers, all kinds of shenanigans going on. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be an adjustment period, and hopefully as a Lions fan, I hope they continue to suck. But it's
yeah, and certainly we talked about one of the strengths for the Lions being consistent, their consistency. So they're definitely a veteran team at this point. So I'm hoping the fact we've definitely seen some things out of the Vikings, out of the Bears where their defense have looked good, but I'm hoping that the fact that the Lions are this unit that has been together is going to help them overcome that, and the fact that you're not there's going to be some inconsistency from those other teams should help us get back-to-back NFC titles, which would be fantastic. And the first time it's ever happened. So, I'm all for that.
Yeah, heck yeah. And then on the other side with the Titans, just real quick, Will Levis kind of gave away the game at the end there with that final interception, but he's got the talent and the arm and the mayonnaise behind him, right?
He does Hellman's mayonnaise now.
Yeah, so I think shoring up some of that turnover bug with him will go a long way because I think he's got what it takes.
And he certainly, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, he's got some weapons there on offense. We'll have to see how they improve every week here as we move forward. And then a battle in Florida, Jeffrey. And one of the most interesting things about this game happened before the kickoff with Tyreek Hill being arrested and handcuffed. I guess he wasn't arrested. He was handcuffed. And then, they ultimately let him go and he went to the game. But the Dolphins getting the 2017 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars there, Jeffrey, in 2 AFC playoff contenders there. A nice matchup between them. Trevor Lawrence looked good, but ultimately the difference was that Tyreek Hill touchdown. Fantasy owners know he's always good for 100 yards, and he did not disappoint with that last touchdown to ice the game. What are your thoughts there about the Jaguars and Dolphins?
Yeah, I thought it was a good game. There, people are looking for the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence by extension to kind of take that next step and be a kind of what he's been billed as. Which when he was drafted, he's billed as like this generational talent kind of guy, right? Like he's like one of the best prospect in years. But I think he's just been good. He hasn't been like super elite. So they're hoping for him to make that kind of leap this year, and I think they'll need to for them to be successful there. And on the flip side, I thought it was funny when Tyreek Hill scored that touchdown. Part of his touchdown dance is Jalen Waddle came over there and kind of handcuffed him. So he was detained in the end zone as well. So a very eventful day for Mr. Tyreek Hill.
Hey, if you can't, make sometimes the best way to deal with bad situations is just try to laugh them off and try to make light of them as much as you can. So happy everything worked out and he was able to get to the game. And yeah, interesting stuff going down there in Florida. Something that wasn't as interesting, we had the Seahawks and the Broncos square off, Jeffrey. two West Coast teams. The Seahawks got a 26-20 victory. The Broncos defense was able to record like two safeties and back-to-back drives or something like that. But both of these teams definitely have a lot of room for improvement. Bo Nix didn't look bad in his debut in the NFL, but certainly these both of these teams, I definitely think, especially with the divisions they play in, I don't think we'll be seeing them in the in the playoffs. But what was your thoughts here about the Seahawks and the Broncos?
Yeah, this is the first game after the Pete Carroll era in the Seahawks, and they clearly want to pass the ball more. Didn't work out as as great with all like the gelling of the new coordinators and the new stuff, but yeah, I think the Broncos defense, they look good. They just signed Surtain to a long extension, so I think they have the piece there. And Bo Nix is kind of what Sean Payton values in a quarterback, but it's a very decent fit. So I'm curious to see kind of how they develop and how this offense kind of evolves throughout the season.
Yeah, it is very much worth noting that rookie quarterbacks tend to not play well in their first game. It's just historically tends to be the case. So again, 16 games to go, but definitely room for improvement with Bo Nix and of course the rest of the rookie quarterbacks that we've talked about as well. He's not really a rookie head coach, but a returning head coach to the NFL, sticking with the AFC West. Jim Harbaugh got his first win with the Chargers, 22-10. Los Angeles got the win over Las Vegas. That is really hard to do if you've been watching the NFL for a long time, because I definitely wanted to say San Diego and Oakland, but Los Angeles getting the victory over Las Vegas, the Chargers over the Raiders. Again, you had Lad McConkey getting his first touchdown pass of his NFL career. Justin Herbert looked good in this game. J.K. Dobbins, the former Raven, kind of had a reemergence, and of course they have him and Gus Edwards. So it seems like Jim Harbaugh stole a couple pieces from John Harbaugh and is starting to, using them to jumpstart his team here. But the Chargers defense looked good. Max Crosby looked good for the Raiders, but that offense with Gardner Minshew struggled a little bit there down the line. So what were your takeaways there from the Chargers versus the Raiders, Jeffrey?
So on the Chargers side, Jim Harbaugh, obviously, people were kind of expecting them to come and run the ball like 75 times in a row or something like that and go to this old school football. But, I think, he's a good coach as much as I hate him as a professional Michigan hater. As much as I hate him, he's a good coach. And I think Chargers of old would have chargered that game away. You know what I mean if you follow the NFL and specifically the Chargers, right? They have a tendency to be sloppy. They have a tendency to really be like the same old Lions in a lot of ways. But I think having Jim Harbaugh there makes that so that team's just going to be more competent in general because he's a good coach. He's going to kind of clean that stuff up that Staley wasn't really able to do.
Yeah, I think, him being a former player as well, obviously he's been a head coach for a little while now, or well, not for a little while, for a decent amount of time now. But I think similar to Dan Campbell, you're right. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to come in there and set the culture. And so this is obviously season one trying to do that. And, we know they sort of blew up their offense from what it traditionally was, getting rid of Keenan Allen, getting rid of Mike Williams. So I don't necessarily think like this is going to be the season where they make the push. But I definitely think they'll be sort of similar to how Dan Campbell did coming in, and this is going to be starting to lay the building blocks for them moving forward. And, where it took us 2 seasons to kind of get there, maybe they can do it on a faster pace, but, I think it's definitely, I would imagine it's probably going to take more.
They have a tough division to do it in.
Most certainly. Anytime you're looking up at the Kansas City Chiefs, that is a tough time for anybody. Couple more games here. We had the Cowboys and the Browns. And, if you were with us earlier, I talked about my bottom 3 quarterbacks. The third quarterback, we already talked about Daniel Jones and Bryce Young. Number 3 on that list is Deshaun Watson because, boy, since he was traded to the Browns, Jeffrey, it has been pretty stanky.
Yeah,
Pretty
that
stank.
contract gets worse and worse as the weeks goes on. Not just for the off the field, not even just for the off the field issues. I mean, they sold the absolute farm to get this guy in there to kind of be the quarterback that he was in Houston.
Mhm.
But interesting. I heard a take on a podcast I listen to on that covers the NFL, and one of the beat writers was talking about. He is beat writer for Houston, and he was kind of commenting on um, uh, Deshaun Watson's kind of time here now away for the Browns. He actually left during a period of time where those 2 years were probably the most significant changes in defensive schemes. So he was pretty much out of football while the defenses kind of got to where we currently play them
Mm.
today. So now he's coming back and he almost has to relearn like a new meta that's there, which, I'm not defending him in any way, but
Mhm.
I thought that was an interesting take given kind of like the change away from two high safeties and kind of going um, more into those cover concepts. But yeah, if you're going to pay this kind of money to somebody, fully guaranteeing it, putting a clause in there that no outside legal issues can cause a void in the contract. You went that far for this guy, sold your soul for this guy, and Joe Flacco can come in and immediately just start to run that offense like 100 times better than him. I mean, you've got some problems there, especially it's wasting a very good defense that they got.
Yeah, and I think my favorite meme from that game was the fact that Deshaun Watson being worse than Baker Mayfield is the most Browns thing ever.
Baker
So
balled out today. That's crazy. Yeah.
and so we'll get to Baker in just a second, but also Dak Prescott looked good in his first game as obviously it was early. We did the show earlier that morning, and as we were doing the show, it was announced that he is now the highest paid player in the NFL. So his first game as the highest paid player, he definitely. I mean, was he great? Was it like an all time performance? Not necessarily, but he did. I mean, he looked good. There were plenty of great, good passes out there, and that Cowboys defense again playing up against Deshaun Watson in that Browns offense as they struggled. That 1-2 combo, they looked pretty tough here in week one, but of course that's kind of the cycle for the Cowboys, right? We get a hot start, we start to think Cowboys fans start to think this is the year, and then it just ends up to them disappointing in the playoffs, and it's just a vicious cycle. So we'll have to see if it repeats itself, but at least here in week one, lots to feel good about if you're a Cowboys fan. Now we talked about Baker Mayfield in this Tampa Bay team, Jeffrey. They get a 37-20 win over the Commanders. Baker definitely looked good. And not only did Baker look good, but the defense looked good as well. Of course, on the Commanders side of things, we did have Josh Daniels getting his first start for the Commanders in his young rookie career. He didn't look great throwing the ball, but he, unlike the other rookie quarterbacks, did have success. Sorry, not Josh Daniels, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels did have success rushing the football. He was able to find the end zone twice there. So, compared to the other rookies, perhaps he had the best debut, but certainly 37-20 falling in a loss there. Not ideal, even though he did put up some impressive stats.
Yeah, shout out to Baker, just dunking on the Browns wherever he goes. But yeah, I think Tampa. I really think that Tampa Bay is a pretty decent team. Todd Bowles is a really good defensive coach, despite him not showing any emotion whatsoever for anything, and being very conservative, which is kind of going against the new norm here in the NFL, where coaches are being really aggressive with play calling and all that. But Baker clearly can play. They signed a new contract for him. He's not like one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, but I mean he's playing better than the highest paid quarterback in the league, well, the second highest now with Deshaun Watson. But like he's balling, and you're going to get another 1,000-yard receiving year out of Mike Evans. They've got weapons there. Their defense is good, and I think they're a favorite for that division.
Yeah, they're quietly one of the more successful teams in the NFC. This is their I think they've been to the playoffs the last 4 years in a row. So and they're the only team in the NFC to do that. So they are quite, sort of quietly under the radar, one of the better teams in the NFC. So we'll have to see. Of course, we'll get to see them firsthand this week as the Lions take them on. But before we talk about the Sunday night football game, Jeffrey, we'll quickly touch on the Monday night football game. One of the big surprises, of course, for Monday night football was the fact that Christian McCaffrey McCafferty was a scratch from that game with his hamstring / calf issue.
R.I.P. Fantasy Bros. That happened pretty late.
It happened real late. So unless you had a really compassionate commissioner, you probably had to eat a big old L on that one. And of course, since you probably took him with the first pick, that's painful. I know I saw some people that do like the what is it? Not the is it elimination or what is the name of that fantasy mode where survive? Is it survival? Anyways, that mode where like you pick players and like they each week, depending on how they perform, they get like cut or whatever. Some people are taking him in that, and it's like, oh
well,
shit.
Yeah, right.
But the 49ers, despite being at that handicap for not having the player that their offense is designed to run through, came out with a 32-19 victory here, Jeffrey. Aaron Rodgers, of course, it was his first game back from that injury, but Jordan Mason, the undrafted rookie running back, they gave the ball to him quite a bit, 28 carries, 147 yards, and a touchdown. Really, the 49ers pretty much dominated this game. So I know Aaron Rodgers mentioned the fact that he had some rust that he still needed to get off. And of course, that again, it's a long season. It's just week one. But what were your thoughts about that Monday night matchup?
Yeah, I think one of the funniest moments was Brandon Ayuk laying off for the catch and that touchdown catch and kind of just letting it kind of go through his hands after a big off season of holding out, wanting to get traded, threatening not to play, them threatening him to be traded to the Steelers. He didn't want any part of that, so he suited up. But yeah, I think the Christian McCaffrey, I'm hoping that it's I hope it's like a 1 week thing because he does get banged up quite a bit. He's always questionable. He's always taking a day off of practice, that kind of thing. Which, if that's how you're going to manage him and still get high, production out of him, all for you. But yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers and the Jets have some things to kind of work out on offense a bit here. I mean, albeit he is on the other side of 35. He is coming off of a pretty debilitating injury that usually takes athletes almost like a year almost to kind of get back into their form. So I think he played decent given that. And I think you had mentioned this here when we were having our pre-show kind of chat that he has a tendency to start out slow in the beginning of the year, typically. And could that be something where he doesn't go to training camp and all that kind of stuff, and he uses the first quarter of the season as the preseason kind of thing, which I think a lot of teams are actually doing more and more now. Yeah, they've got some stuff to clean up there in New Jersey.
Yeah, there were 10 starting quarterbacks that did not play in the preseason this preseason, and one of those 10, obviously Aaron Rodgers was in there, but also included in this 10 was Jared Goff. And so, Jeffrey, it's time to talk about that gritty overtime win that the Lions had over the Rams. But certainly a game of up and downs. But, with Jared Goff not playing in the preseason, there was definitely, some rust there. I had said, consistency, his third year in leading Ben Johnson's offense, was kind of expecting things to look crisp. And at times it did. But, we sort of ran into that same problem we had last year where the first half looked good, and then the second half came around and we really struggled. So, that may be just kudos to Sean McVay and the Rams defense going in, being able to make adjustments at halftime and be able to be more prepared for what the Lions were putting out there. Because the Rams are definitely no pushover. They are a good team. And certainly Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the league and his coaching staff. So maybe that says more about the Rams than it does about the Lions. But ultimately, definitely feeling good coming out of that game because I think the Lions showed again that they're a veteran team. A lot of this team, the core has been together now for 3 seasons. They believe in themselves. And, it used to be, I think, the same old Lions used to be a thing where there were all these opportunities for the Lions, right, where they could win a game or they could pull something out, and they never used to be able to capitalize on that. The Dan Campbell Lions have made it a point to be able to more often than not capitalize on those opportunities. So they sort of remembered who they were. Yes, it was a close game with the Rams, but ultimately, as soon as they got that ball in the fourth quarter or in overtime, it was kind of a done deal, Jeffrey. And I know you sent
Oh,
this particular image over to me and Nick.
yes.
Taking a look here. Look at that
As
smile.
soon as he found out they're getting the ball in overtime, he knew it was over. The he knew that that David Montgomery is just going to pound it up the middle with almost no resistance. Those guys are tired. He's like, yes, that Stafford's not getting that ball back.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was sort of a back and forth through the four quarters. But when it came to overtime, I think if you could get the Lions to consistently put forward that effort that they put forward in overtime across four quarters, I don't think there's a team in the NFL that can compete with them.
Yeah,
Obviously,
absolutely.
the Kansas City would be, they bring something else, but just the way they were able to dominate that defense to push them back and just run the ball, like that was just, I mean, it was a thing of beauty,
Oh
thing of
yeah,
beauty.
it was absolutely incredible. It was a Big Ten football cloud of dust kind of thing. But that's kind of the what they've been doing. They switch out Gibbs and Montgomery fairly consistency, and that's a lot for a defensive line, two, the greater defense to deal with. With one, you're dealing with a guy who can break it on you on the outside, is super slippery, but then all of a sudden you take that guy out of the game, you're like, all right, well, we at least have a playoff. No, you don't, because now you have a freight train running at you, or you've got our weapons on the outside. It is very difficult to kind of cover everything on this team. I will say though, on a more, I guess, negative side, before we kind of talk about JMO's coming out party, I'm on race. Ross St. Brown had a very quiet day. I
Mm.
think the Rams really focused on taking him out of the game and kind of making us show who our wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 are. Khalif Raymond got some looks at it at wide receiver 3, but really I think we really established our wide receiver 2 in our JMO coming out party. Boy went off.
Yeah, Waymo got his first game ball of his career, as he said, and certainly, you know, I don't. He's not leading the league in touchdowns and receptions after week one or receiving yards, but if he can continue this type of performance, uh, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, he looked good, and yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Moving forward, definitely going to want to see Amon-Ra St. Brown be so get him more active in the game as well as Sam Laporta. So it might have just been that the Rams were trying to take those two weapons away and have us beat them with other players. But certainly those were two players who, compared to the production we saw last season, sort of was missing in this game against the Rams.
Mhm.
And then from the Rams side of things, Jeffrey, we were talking a little bit and gushing before the show about Matt Stafford because obviously, I think we both share the opinion that he is the sort of the best quarterback ever to play behind center for the Lions, especially when you're talking about just pure ability. I
Mhm.
know he just yeah, he's the way he throws the ball is just crazy, and he was under pressure, still making plays, making no look passes. Like there was just
The
he
man grew up in the crucible here by not having an offensive line, and it molded him into what he is today. It's
forged in fire, and his stuff is tough, man.
Yeah, he's an
He is
absolute
a tough
surgeon out
guy.
there when he can be. We had talked about him trying to fit things into windows that he can fit, but it kind of backfired on him in the end zone there, and I think that was one of the biggest differentiators. That turnover battle, that especially that you talked about in our pregame show.
Mm. Yeah, thankfully we were able to come on the positive side there, and certainly it definitely helped the injuries that they had to their tackles during the game. Obviously, they were starting without their best tackle to begin with, but then they had a couple of injuries that really stretched their offensive line pretty thin. Of course, Puka Nakua had to leave the game as well, and he was such a problem for us in the playoff game. Cooper Cup was still running wild out there, but having Puka and him out there could have certainly impacted the game. And then, of course, they also had some injuries in their secondary as well. So after, of course, we had talked about all the free agent acquisitions they had try and improve their secondary situation. And then just injuries sort of limited them here in week one. So,
Yeah.
definitely a game I think the Lions should have won. They did end up winning it. And, it'll be, I think this is a great building block for the rest of the season. I think a lot of fans got super excited and are definitely thinking that, a lot of people were celebrating like we won the Super Bowl. We still have a long way to go before that. But
Yeah.
I think this is definitely the type of gritty win against this. I don't think there's any denying that the Rams are a good team. So this is a good win or a gritty win over a good team. And I think it definitely, it has me encouraged that even though we struggled, it's week one. The teams, both the offense and the defense, should get better as we go along here. But the fact that we were able to show our composure and win a game that we should win because of the situation, definitely encouraging. Because in the past, Lions teams of old didn't always win the games they were supposed to. So it's good to see and encouraging as we look to build on this 2024 campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick back to the Rams. Just a quick shout out to Jared Verse. That man is a man out
Mm,
there. I mean, he at one point he was tackling Monty down for it was a short game, but Monty just kind of just like bounced off of him like it was nothing. But I think he had a pretty good rookie debut. He got that sack on Jared Goff, which I don't know at the end of that quarter to run out the clock. I don't know why you putting Jared Goff out there to get sacked. Like, take a knee. If you're gonna let it go, take a knee, man. Don't let the boy go out there and get smoked. But I think Jared Verse had a very good kind of first look into the NFL, and yeah, and I think some of the rust that you had mentioned about Jared Goff when we first started talking about the Lions, I really think that is attributed to the missing of preseason time. And I'm not
mm.
saying that's necessarily a bad thing. There's several teams who are deciding to kind of manage their athletes in a way to where they're not going to play in the preseason. We're going to keep them as healthy as possible, even if that means slow starts here in the beginning. And I'm actually all kind of for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And another player I think it's good to mention is the rookie Terrion Arnold. He did have two pass interference calls during the game, but after the game, Cooper Cup did give him some props, and so I think that he had a good debut as well. And of course, definitely room for growth, but certainly an encouraging first start again against the passing attack between the receivers they have on the field and the guy throwing it. This was a heck of a first test for him. So great to see him play well. And then even Enos Rickshaw or Rake Straw, sorry, having to come in because Carlton Davis got a little shooken up there. Seeing the two rookies step up here in against a tough opponent week one is, I think, a great sign as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of those pass interferences, it was almost like you kind of had to, otherwise you'd give up a touchdown right there. So I'm not too hard
Mm.
on him based on the competition, but and the situation in the game. But yeah, it was nice not seeing Cam Sutton getting cooked out there on a week to week, play to play basis. We were actually keeping these guys ahead of us. It was refreshing, especially compared to last year.
Yeah, already big signs of improvement. So if this is where we're starting, it's going to be great. To see where our ceiling is going to be come playoff time. I think is really exciting. So looking forward to see how these players continue to grow and evolve. It's going to be, I think, going to be good. Um, so now, Jeffrey, we're going to go ahead and do our champs and chumps of the week. I'll kick things off here with my champ. I'm going to stick with well, I guess we can do kind of. We'll do one for the Lions if you can, and one for just the NFL in general. I think my champ for the Lions, I'm going to go with Aiden Hutchinson. Like I said, I think he had the most pressures that he's ever had in a game. He definitely was a force on that line, keeping Matt Stafford from feeling comfortable back there and feeling like he was back at home in Detroit. He definitely was feeling that hostility, not only. Obviously, the fans were a big part of that, booing him every time he stepped out on the field. But Aiden Hutchinson definitely kept him from statuing up back there. So Aiden, I'm going with him for my offensive champ or my Lions champ. And then for the NFL in general, Ooh, I think I got to give it to Saquon, man. He came out there and, the game started off a little bit rough his first couple of runs, but by the end of it, the 3 touchdowns kind of showing the Giants, hey, you could have had this, but, I wanted to be a Giant, but you let this go. I'm going to give it to Saquon. He looked pretty good in his debut with the
Yeah,
Eagles.
absolutely.
How about you, Jeffrey? Who do you have as your champs for this week?
My champs for the Lions is JMO. Got to give it to him. After not being able to play first year for the injury, having the gambling suspension for part of the last year's season, we finally are having this guy in the practice, in the preseason, in the game here, and he's showing kind of why we drafted him so high with all that speed and that quickness and just leaving people in the dust. It's gonna be fun to watch. And like I said, Jared Goff actually got the game ball, but he gave it to JMO. He's like, it's your coming out party. Welcome to Detroit again, kind of thing. And then my NFL champ, I got to give it to Gerard Mayo. People were thinking this is going to be literally one of the worst rosters, one of the worst kind of teams. They're going to get a top 5 pick here. They're going to suck. When is Drake May coming in? He went out there and put an AFC favorite kind of like back on its heels. So I got to give it to Gerard Mayo.
I like that because, it's, again, it's a long season, so we'll see how it plays out. We'll see if this was like a blip on the radar and they really are one of the worst teams in the NFL, or if this is just if they're going to be a sneaky good team. We'll have to see how that plays out, but certainly give them props for week 1. I like that. And then in terms of chumps, I'm not going to dictate that we have to pick one for the Lions because I don't think there's really a clear pick there. But for my chump, there were quite a few issues with the referees. Now, I know it's week 1. They had a long off season too.
Don't give them that. Don't give them that.
There were a couple times where, like in the Cowboys-Browns game, where the Cowboys just sent out their offense, even though it wasn't like they were trying to take over the ball like it was on downs.
Yeah.
And they were like, they had to stop the game and like figure it out. It's just, there were a lot of weird things like that happened in NFL week 1. So I'm going to go just collectively the refs, because there were a lot of mistakes that I haven't really seen before that were quite silly. So I'm going the refs in this one.
Yeah. My chump I have one chump for the Lions. I don't know who did this, so this is a nebulous chump. Whoever decided to end the half with Jared Goff taking the sack, that's just not good. That's just not good regardless. Like, even if you want a dead play there, don't put your franchise in danger like that. Come on. And you give the rookie a free sack. So that's my big chump of the week for the Lions. Outside of that, I have to go with my NFL chump, continuing to be the Browns organization, Deshaun Watson, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call the mix of that, and just how it's just a poor situation. It's just you're seeing it brought to bear every week. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next week or so we get a Deshaun Watson tweeting out from his camp saying that he's got a shoulder issue. I don't know if he can play. His money's guaranteed, so it doesn't have to play. I could see something like that going on, and based on kind of his off-field issues, it doesn't seem like he's one to give the benefit of the doubt to.
Yeah, I feel bad for Browns fans. They kind of need they don't have bad players, especially on defense, and like the surrounding talent around him on offense is pretty good. But they kind of need that like renaissance with their own Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, something to come in, just because at least as far as I can remember, they have just always been just a dumpster fire. So they need something there to come shake them up organizationally. I like that pick. That's it's rough there in Cleveland.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Jeffrey, for joining me here today, and then everybody for tuning in. Of course, we're streaming live to you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And then, of course, you can catch our reels on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. We're on a lot of channels nowadays. And then you can also
socials.
All the socials, and then you can also catch this episode uploaded to Spotify as a podcast. So whatever your favorite method of consuming content, I think at this point we almost have a little bit of something for everyone. So We appreciate your support. Whether you're tuning in for a couple of seconds or if you can stay here. I know the episodes are tending to be a little long. One of the things we're going to hopefully do as we get more organized here as the season goes on, we'll hopefully be able to sort of slim things down and keep things a little bit sleeker so that it's a little bit more manageable for you. But I think to help with that, introducing the different content types makes it great. If you can't devote, 50 minutes to come listen to Jeffrey and myself talk about the entirety of the NFL, and you just want to take a little clip, we have those for you now. So there's plenty of options. So hopefully you can find something that you like, and if you do like it and you want to help the show grow, the best way to do that is to go ahead and subscribe, all of that good stuff. Share it with your friends who might be interested, and we certainly appreciate your support as we look to grow the Lions Grid community. But Jeffrey, it has been a successful week 1. We have a Lions victory. We're 1-0. Lots to be excited about. And of course, this upcoming week, again, we're taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll be back on Sunday to talk about that game. But any final thoughts you want to leave the listeners with here?
No, thank you all for all of your support. We really appreciate it. We love to chat about football in front of you all. So here's to another good season.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Yep. And so that game again against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is a 1:00 kickoff time. It is back-to-back home games for the Lions to start the season. So Ford Field will be a rockin' this Sunday again. Again, another matchup against an NFC playoff team from last year. So hopefully we can make it 2 for 2 and continue. We beat the Rams, we beat the Buccaneers in the playoffs, keep that ball rolling and get off to a nice 2-0 start. I'd take that any day of the week.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll catch you during the next episode, everybody. And thanks for tuning in. This has been the Lions Grid. Bye-bye.
Bye.